Here's something that will either motivate you or make you want to throw your phone across the room. The average American household earns about $50,000 more today than they did 40 years ago, adjusted for inflation. Yet somehow, most families feel like they're running in place. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos added roughly $75 billion to his net worth in a single year during 2020. That's not climbing a staircase. That's taking a rocket elevator to the penthouse while everyone else argues about who gets the next step. This video breaks down exactly how the wealthy leap entire floors of the wealth staircase while most people never move at all, and what actually separates those who rise from those who stay stuck. Picture wealth as a staircase with 5 distinct levels. The bottom step is survival mode. This means living paycheck to paycheck, where a $400 emergency would require borrowing money or skipping bills. According to the Federal Reserve, nearly 40% of Americans sit on this step. The next level up is stability, having a small emergency fund, maybe some retirement savings starting to build. Above that sits security. This means owning assets like a home, having 6 months of expenses saved, and feeling genuinely comfortable. Then comes freedom. This is where passive income from investments, businesses, or real estate covers basic living expenses. Finally, at the top, there's abundance. This is generational wealth that compounds faster than anyone could possibly spend it. Most people assume the journey up this staircase works like a video game. Put in your hours, gain experience points, level up eventually. But the wealthy figured out something crucial a long time ago. The rules change dramatically at each level. The strategies that get someone from survival to stability are completely different from what moves someone from freedom to abundance. And here's where it gets frustrating. The higher you climb, the easier it becomes to climb faster. The staircase isn't even. The steps at the bottom are steep and slippery. The steps at the top have escalators built into them. Take a simple example: credit cards. Someone on the survival step with a low credit score pays 24% interest on purchases. Someone on the freedom step with excellent credit gets cards with 0% introductory rates for 18 months, plus cashback rewards, plus travel perks. The person who needs the financial break the most pays extra for the privilege of borrowing money. The person who doesn't need to borrow at all gets paid to do it. This pattern repeats everywhere in the economy. Bulk buying saves money, but only if you have cash to buy in bulk. Investing in index funds requires spare income that survival mode simply doesn't provide. Even something as basic as car insurance costs more in low-income zip codes. The wealthy call this phenomenon the velocity of money, and understanding it changes everything. Money in motion generates more money. A dollar sitting in a checking account earning 0.01% interest is functionally dead. That same dollar invested in an S&P 500 index fund has historically returned about 10% annually before inflation. Over 30 years, that single dollar becomes $17. But the real magic happens when wealthy individuals put money into assets that generate cash flow while also appreciating in value. Real estate is the classic example. Buy a rental property, have tenants pay the mortgage, watch the property value rise, refinance to pull out equity tax-free, use that money to buy another property. Repeat until retirement becomes optional. Warren Buffett, perhaps the most famous investor alive, pays a lower effective tax rate than his secretary. He said this publicly, multiple times, almost as a challenge to fix the system. How is this possible? Because the tax code treats different types of income very differently. Earned income, the money from a regular job, gets taxed at rates up to 37% federally, plus state taxes, plus Social Security and Medicare taxes. Investment income, money from selling stocks held longer than a year, gets taxed at a maximum of 20%. And here's the real trick. Unrealized gains aren't taxed at all. If someone owns stock worth $1 billion that was purchased for $100 million, that $900 million gain exists only on paper until the stock is sold. The wealthy don't sell. They borrow against their assets instead. This strategy sounds complicated but works beautifully for those who can access it. Imagine owning $10 million in Amazon stock. Instead of selling shares to buy a yacht and paying capital gains tax on the profit, just take out a loan using the stock as collateral. The interest rate on such a loan might be 3 or 4%, far less than the tax bill from selling. Meanwhile, the stock continues growing, potentially at 8 to 12% annually. The loan interest might even be deductible in certain situations. The wealthy person gets their yacht, keeps their stock, avoids the tax, and watches their net worth climb anyway. Regular people get a paycheck, lose a third to taxes immediately, and try to save whatever's left. The concept of leverage, using borrowed money to amplify returns, is perhaps the biggest separator between wealth levels. Someone on the stability step might think debt is universally bad, and for consumer debt that's often true. Credit card balances, car loans on depreciating vehicles, furniture financed at 29% interest. These destroy wealth systematically. But the wealthy use what's called productive debt. They borrow at low rates to purchase assets that generate returns higher than the cost of borrowing. A real estate investor might put 20% down on a property, borrow the rest at 6% interest, and earn 12% returns on the total property value. The math means they're effectively earning 30% on their actual invested cash. That's leverage working in their favour. There's a reason wealthy families stay wealthy across generations, and it's not just inheritance, though that certainly helps. It's the transfer of financial knowledge, connections, and mindset. A child born into the abundance level learns about compound interest at the dinner table. They understand the difference between assets and liabilities before finishing high school. They have aunts and uncles who can make introductions to influential people, provide internships at real companies, and co-sign loans for first businesses or properties. A child born into survival mode might have parents working 2 jobs each. With no time or energy to teach financial concepts, they may not fully understand themselves. The network effect of wealth cannot be overstated. When Kylie Jenner launched her cosmetics company, she already had hundreds of millions of social media followers, a marketing platform that would cost anyone else billions to build. When wealthy families invest, they often get access to private deals, hedge funds with high minimum investments, and startup equity rounds closed to the general public. The best opportunities don't appear on Robinhood or in the newspaper. They circulate through private networks, country clubs, and alumni associations of elite universities. This isn't a conspiracy. It's just how social capital works. People share opportunities with people they know, and wealthy people tend to know other wealthy people. So what does someone without those built-in advantages actually do? This is where the conversation gets practical, because understanding the game is only useful if it leads to better moves. The single most important shift in thinking involves time. People on the lower steps of the wealth staircase trade time for money directly. An hour of work equals a fixed amount of pay. There's a hard ceiling on this approach because everyone gets the same 24 hours daily. The wealthy figured out how to decouple time from income entirely. They build systems, buy assets, and hire people, essentially purchasing other people's time at wholesale rates and selling the output at retail prices. A business owner paying an employee $25 an hour to generate $50 an hour in value captures that difference repeatedly, across many employees, around the clock. That's not exploitation when done fairly. It's leverage applied to human capital. The phrase passive income gets thrown around social media like confetti, usually by people selling courses about making passive income. But underneath the hype exists a real principle. Assets that generate cash flow without daily involvement represent the escalator built into the upper steps of the wealth staircase. Dividend-paying stocks send quarterly checks regardless of whether the owner did anything that quarter. Rental properties collect rent while the owner sleeps. Businesses with good managers operate without the founder micromanaging every decision. Even intellectual property, books, music, patents, software, can generate royalties for decades after the initial work finished. Building these assets requires significant upfront effort or capital, but once established, they compound automatically. Here's something fascinating about the psychology of wealth building. Researchers at Cornell University found that wealthy individuals think about money in terms of decades, while those struggling financially think in terms of days or weeks. This makes complete sense when examined closely. Someone worried about making rent can't afford to lock money away in investments for 30 years. Their time horizon extends to the next paycheck, but this short-term thinking, though completely rational given the circumstances, prevents the very wealth accumulation that would eventually eliminate the pressure. It's a trap with no easy exit, which is precisely why escaping the bottom steps proves so difficult. The wealthy also understand something counterintuitive about spending. The most expensive way to live is cheap. Buying the lowest priced boots means replacing them every year. Buying quality boots once means wearing them for a decade. This concept, sometimes called the Boots theory of economics after a Terry Pratchett novel, extends everywhere. Cheap cars break down and drain money through repairs. Cheap apartments in rough neighborhoods increase stress, reduce sleep quality, and hurt productivity. Cheap food damages health over time, leading to medical bills that dwarf any grocery savings. The ability to spend more upfront to save more overall is itself a privilege that requires already having climbed a few steps. Tax strategy deserves more attention because it represents one of the few areas where knowledge alone can produce significant results. The tax code spans over 70,000 pages, and buried within those pages are provisions specifically designed to encourage certain behaviors. Real estate investors can use something called a 1031 exchange to sell one property and buy another without paying capital gains tax on the sale. Business owners can deduct expenses that employees cannot. Home offices, vehicles, travel, meals, education, even certain clothing. Retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs allow money to grow tax-free for decades. None of this is illegal or even ethically questionable. These are rules written into law available to anyone who learns them. The wealthy simply learn them earlier and use them more aggressively. Consider the Roth IRA conversion ladder, a strategy that sounds complicated but works elegantly. Someone retires early with money in a traditional IRA. Withdrawing it directly would trigger income tax plus potential penalties. Instead, they convert small amounts each year to a Roth IRA, paying tax at their now lower retired income rate. After 5 years, those converted funds become available completely tax-free. Executed properly across a decade of early retirement, this strategy can eliminate hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime taxes. Financial advisors charge good money to explain these techniques. The wealthy pay for that advice happily, knowing the return on investment dwarfs the fee. Another mechanism the wealthy exploit is called asset protection. Once someone accumulates significant wealth, keeping it becomes as important as building it. Lawsuits, divorces, business failures, and medical catastrophes can wipe out decades of progress in months. The wealthy use legal structures, LLCs, trusts, family limited partnerships, offshore entities in some cases, to separate personal assets from personal liability. A rental property owned personally exposes everything to a lawsuit from an injured tenant. That same property owned by an LLC limits exposure to only the assets inside that LLC. Is this fair? That's a policy debate. Is this effective? Absolutely, and pretending otherwise helps no one. The uncomfortable truth is that the wealth staircase exists within systems designed by people who already reached the top. Tax laws get written by legislators who receive donations from wealthy individuals and corporations. Financial regulations get influenced by lobbyists, representing banks and investment firms. This isn't a call to hopelessness or conspiracy thinking. It's simply an acknowledgement that understanding the game means understanding who made the rules and why. Armed with this knowledge, individuals can play more strategically rather than pretending everyone starts from the same position with the same tools. So what actually works for someone starting from the lower steps? The research points to a few consistent factors. Increasing income matters more than cutting expenses once basic necessities are covered. Someone earning $40,000 can only cut so much before hitting biological minimums for food, shelter, and transportation. But income has no ceiling. Skills that command higher pay, sales, coding, specialized trades, management, can be developed deliberately. Side businesses, even small ones, provide both extra income and tax advantages unavailable to pure employees, and investing early, even tiny amounts, builds the habit and captures years of compounding that can never be recovered later. The final piece involves identity. People tend to make financial decisions consistent with how they see themselves. Someone who identifies as bad with money unconsciously confirms that belief through choices. Someone who sees themselves as an investor, even while investing just $50 monthly, makes different decisions about spending, learning, and opportunity recognition. The wealthy often raise children who see wealth as normal, expected, and deserved. This isn't arrogance. It's programming that shapes every subsequent decision. Reprogramming takes effort, but awareness of the pattern is the necessary starting point. None of this guarantees anything. The staircase remains uneven, and some people face obstacles that no amount of strategy can fully overcome. Health crises, family obligations, discrimination, economic downturns, and pure bad luck all play roles that self-help narratives often ignore. But understanding how the game actually works, rather than how we wish it worked, provides the only foundation for making progress within it. The wealthy aren't playing a different game. They're playing the same game with better information, better tools, and a head start measured in generations. Closing that gap requires seeing it clearly first. The wealth staircase will always exist in some form. The question isn't whether some people will climb faster than others. That's guaranteed by mathematics, luck, and human nature. The real question is whether you understand which step you're standing on, what's keeping you there, and which specific moves might get you to the next one. Because movement is possible, it's just never as simple as working harder or wanting it more. The wealth staircase isn't a meritocracy where effort automatically equals advancement. It's a system with different rules at every level, designed by those who've already reached the top. The wealthy use leverage, tax strategy, networks, and compounding assets to jump multiple steps while others struggle to gain any ground. Understanding these mechanisms won't instantly change your position, but it strips away the illusion that the game is fair, and seeing the board clearly is always the first move toward playing it better.